Special Stories. Not gonna be here too long. I thought I'd cover what I wanted to cover like after the Sunday service. Need to go, chill, relax. You know what I'm saying, with the first lady. You know what I'm saying. Much love to my first lady, Vonta. You know what I'm saying. Getting her rest on. Gotta put you to bed, bed. Catch y'all in a minute. You know what I'm saying. Catch her in a minute. But I said I was gonna cover this, and from the guy Robert F. Williams, True Revolutionary, 17 minutes, 39-second video, so we ain't gonna be here long. But I just want to cover this history of this revolutionary that no one talks about. You know me, I promote the revolution over here. So revolutionary music and content. Shouts out to everybody that fucks with my content. Professional or parody music, HHN Special Report, HHN Special Stories, the Fuck the Government podcast, the Fuck the Haters Jam session, the Matrix versus Reality, the Top 15 Countdown, TV show reviews, celebrity reviews, my Cloak and Dagger podcast with my co-host Ocean. Shouts out to everybody that fucks with my content. So let's get off into it. Much love, Dr. Chocolate. And much love, Jess. About to get off into a quick special story real quick by a man named Robert F. Williams. And this man is the true revolutionary. He's the first revolutionary true blueprint. You know what I'm saying? Because this is a revolutionary channel. And shouts out to the doctor. I am Dr. Blight. You know what I'm saying? See, she's the doctor that make you feel good. I'm the doctor that teach you how to kill good. You know what I'm saying? But one doctor to another. Cheers. Cheers to the doctors. And salute to DJ Graves. Yo, I'm working on one of those tracks right now. I'm working on one of the tracks right now, DJ. Go, DJ. You already know what it is. She's the doctor that gives happy end. Shh. You remember motherfucking you remember the Wayans brothers? Like, shh, don't tell nobody. I ain't watched the Wayans brothers in so long. That's my shit. That's my shit. I think it's the On Gang one. I think. Because when you saw me too, I think it's the On Gang one. I'm not sure. I'm not fucking sure. I'm not sure. If it's not that, it's the other one. But best believe I'm on the second verse and I'm almost finished with the second verse. I already got the hook. You know, like it's a repetitive hook. It's also 3-6 Mafia shit, but like with another style change. And you know how I do, because I'm Hurricane, the style master. I know y'all playing. Shouts out to Jess. Much love to Dr. Chocolate also. But yeah, about to talk about a man named Robert F. Williams, revolutionary. And it's only 17 minutes, 39 seconds. Ain't gonna be here too long. But you know we gotta start off playing the song first. My baby girl is an assassin. You know that, right? Hurricane, the style master. Play this, we gonna get off into it.
I'm Hurricane, let me tell you a story of the glory, but you gotta hold my 40 for me. I was chillin' watching Rick and Morty, and my chick came through when you know she was getting naughty. Dressed up, went to a party, so many drinks, I think I grabbed up a cordy. We was gigging on the dance floor, but you know, the cops just burst through the damn door. Me and her start blasting, y'all didn't know that my girl is an assassin. Me and her laughing, jumping out the window, landed on the car while I think it was a benzo, smoking on the endo as we roll out to the liquor store, then back to her house. She said that was hot, I said no doubt. Took off her clothes, then we fucked on the couch. Baby girl's an assassin. Yeah, my baby girl is an assassin. My My baby girl is an assassin. Yeah, my baby girl is an assassin. Look, let me tell you another story. Chilling at the diner and the feds, they was coming for me. Baby girl told me load up. Civilians getting hit if they motherfucking don't duck. Test your luck like the game show, but the price is right, bitch, and you know what we came for. You chillin' back in your wheel of fortune. Me and my girl come through, bout to kill just to get a portion. Shoot your head, knock your brain in orbit. Body get contorted, guaranteed it'll be recorded. Hop in the car where baby flow it. Put the pedal to the metal, best believe to keep the streets scorching. Style master, keep the heat going. My girl roll the weed, and you know we gotta keep smoking. Baby girl wetter than the ocean. She said come here, so you know I gotta get up on it. Baby girl is an assassin. Storm blaster. My baby girl is an assassin. Storm blaster. My baby girl is an assassin. Storm blaster. My baby girl is an assassin. Yeah, Storm blaster. My baby girl is an assassin. Storm blaster. Baby girl is an assassin. Storm blaster. Baby girl is an assassin. Storm blaster. My baby girl is an assassin. Storm blaster.
Now that's a jam right there. Nigga, Hurricane the Style Master album is the shit. That's the new name of the year. Hurricane the Style Master. You say the whole thing. Robert F. Williams. Let's go.
Go south. Black people were expected to suffer in silence, but Robert F. Williams had another idea. He armed himself, formed a black militia, and stood face to face with the KKK. Most people have heard of Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, but very few know the name Robert F. Williams, the man who flipped the script of the civil rights movement and altered the narrative in the heart of white supremacy. While others were marching and preaching peace, Williams was handing out rifles. While black communities were being terrorized by the Ku Klux Klan, Williams was teaching his neighbors how to shoot, organize, and fight back. Not with hate, but with strategy, boldness, and a deep belief in dignity and self-defense. This wasn't a Hollywood movie. This was real life. North Carolina, 1950s. The KKK roamed the streets. Lynchings were still happening. And the police? Many were either part of the mob or simply turned a blind eye. But when the Klan came for his community, Williams didn't run. He and a group of black war veterans, armed and disciplined, stood their ground, forcing the Klan to retreat. And just like that, the image of the passive black victim shattered overnight. What followed next was even more unbelievable. The U.S. government turned on him. He was charged with kidnapping, a charge later proven false and forced to flee the country. But in exile, Williams became a global icon of resistance. He broadcast revolutionary radio shows from Cuba, met with world leaders like Fidel Castro and Mao Zedong, and inspired the very roots of the Black Panther Party. This is the story of a man erased from most history books, not because he failed, but because he was too bold, fearless, and powerful to be allowed into the mainstream civil rights narrative. This is the story of Robert F. Williams, the black man who terrified the KKK. Robert Franklin Williams was born on February 26, 1925, in Monroe, North Carolina, a small southern town that was drenched in the bitter reality of Jim Crow segregation. From the moment he could walk and talk, Williams was surrounded by injustice. White supremacy wasn't hidden. It was enforced, celebrated, and integrated into everyday life. Separate schools, separate water fountains, and constant intimidation were norms in the world when young Robert was born. He didn't need a textbook to understand racism. He lived it. He saw black men beaten for speaking out. He watched white mobs walk free after attacking black families. And he grew up knowing the police weren't there to protect his community. They were often the very ones causing the harm. His early years were influenced by the strength of black women in his life, especially his grandmother, Ellen Williams, a former enslaved woman who taught him dignity and pride in his identity. She would tell him, "Never let anyone tell you you're less than them." Those words stayed with him for life. When he turned 18, the world was at war. Williams joined the United States Marine Corps, serving in the segregated military during World War II. He was assigned to a labor battalion, not frontline combat, simply because of the color of his skin. Even in uniform, serving his country, he was treated like a second-class citizen. But the Marines taught him something America never intended to give: discipline, tactics, and how to handle a weapon. These skills became crucial later in his life. Williams returned to Monroe with a new fire burning inside him. Not just anger, but clarity. He had faced racism abroad and at home, but now he had the tools to defend himself and his people. "Never again will I be a defenseless Negro," he famously said. Williams realized that the fight for freedom couldn't be won with words alone, not in a world where unarmed black families were being attacked with guns and fire. What started as a boy witnessing injustice had now become a man ready to challenge an entire system that was against his community. Monroe was a town locked in time, where black citizens were expected to know their place and white supremacy ruled the streets. It was a town deeply divided by color and fear. White families lived in comfort, while black residents endured crumbling homes, poor schools, and second-class treatment in every corner of life. Restaurants, bus stations, and water fountains were all segregated, and if any black person dared to challenge the system, they were quickly faced with hostility, or even worse. The local Ku Klux Klan wasn't hiding in the shadows. They were active, organized, and extremely strong. Black residents lived under the constant threat of violence. Families whispered stories about men disappearing in the night. Some were beaten, some never returned. Even children learned early on to keep their heads down, avoid confrontation, and stay silent in the face of injustice. But not everyone could stay silent. When Robert F. Williams returned to Monroe after serving in the U.S. Marine Corps, he came back to this storm of racism. But he came back changed. He had seen the world beyond Monroe. He had been trained in combat. He had learned discipline, organization, and most importantly, the act of courage. In 1955, he joined the Monroe chapter of the NAACP. This was an organization that was struggling to stay alive in a town so hostile that many black residents were afraid to even be seen attending meetings. But Williams wasn't afraid. He soon rose to become president of the chapter and brought with him a new energy, a boldness that shook the very foundation of fear that had gripped the black community for generations. He organized voter registration drives, youth programs, and legal challenges against segregation. But what shocked people most was his public stance that black people had the right to defend themselves. At first, the NAACP's national office pushed back. After all, the mainstream civil rights movement was rooted in nonviolence, turning the other cheek, even in the face of brutal attacks. But Williams had seen enough. According to him, it is not a shame for a man to defend himself, his family, and his home. He wasn't advocating chaos or revenge. He was demanding dignity. And in Monroe, a place where police and Klansmen were sometimes the same, self-defense wasn't a luxury. It was a necessity. As Williams began to build a movement teaching people their constitutional rights and challenging the narrative of passive suffering, the town of Monroe was never the same. What had once been a community paralyzed by fear was now beginning to stir. And the Klan. They soon realized that the days of uncontested terror were numbered. Robert F. Williams had drawn a line in the red Carolina dirt, and he was just getting started. By the mid-1950s, Robert F. Williams had seen enough. He had pleaded for change through the NAACP. He had marched, protested, and written countless letters. But the reality on the ground in Monroe, North Carolina, remained the same. Black families were still being attacked. Crosses still burned on front lawns, and the Ku Klux Klan still rode through black neighborhoods at night, honking their horns, firing shots, and spreading terror with impunity. So Williams did something nearly unthinkable at the time. He chose to fight back, not with empty hands, but with an organized defense. He gathered a group of black men in Monroe. Most of them were Korean War veterans who knew how to handle weapons and tactics. Men who had fought for democracy overseas but came home to be treated like second-class citizens. Together, they formed what was known as the Black Guard. This wasn't a reckless mob. The Black Guard was disciplined, trained, and strategic. They weren't out to start a war. They were out to prevent one. Their mission was simple: protect the black community from racial violence and by any means necessary. Night after night, they patrolled their neighborhoods with rifles in hand, not to instigate, but to deter. And it worked. One night, when a Klan caravan tried to roll through a black neighborhood in Monroe, they met something they didn't expect. Black men were standing tall, armed, and unafraid. Shots rang out. The Klan fled. That night, for perhaps the first time in Monroe's history, the fear shifted. Robert F. Williams had made his point. He famously said, "We will meet violence with violence, and we will meet it in such a way that the violent will know it is not profitable." His message wasn't about hate. It was about survival, about dignity. He wasn't advocating for bloodshed. He was demanding respect. And that message terrified not just white supremacists, but even some of his allies. The national leadership of the NAACP was furious. The organization, led by men like Roy Wilkins, was deeply committed to nonviolence. They believed in the power of a peaceful protest, one of moral superiority. They feared that Williams' actions would give the civil rights movement a violent image and invite more state repression. They ordered him to disband the Black Guard. They asked him to step down as president of the Monroe chapter. But Williams refused to be silenced. He argued that nonviolence couldn't stop bullets, that appealing to morality meant nothing when the system itself was immoral. He once wrote, "It is ridiculous to believe that the oppressed can gain freedom by refusing to defend themselves." He wasn't alone in this thinking. Many black families, especially those living in deeply hostile areas, quietly supported him. They understood his logic. They saw their sons and daughters walk to school under threats. They knew the police wouldn't protect them, but Robert Williams and his men would. His ideas later influenced a generation of black activists, including the likes of Huey Newton and Bobby Seale, who was also a co-founder of the Black Panther Party. Williams was painting a new picture of what black resistance could look like. Not passive, not helpless, but prepared, proud, and unshakable. This chapter in his life wasn't just about picking up arms. It was about forcing America to confront a terrifying truth. If justice wasn't given freely, then dignity would be defended by any means necessary. And in that small town of Monroe, North Carolina, a powerful message was sent to the rest of the country. Black people were no longer going to die quietly. In 1958, something happened in Monroe, North Carolina that was so disturbing, so unbelievable, that it caught the attention of the entire world. Two young black boys, James Thompson, age 9, and David Simpson, just 7 years old, were arrested and charged with rape. What was their crime? A group of children, black and white, had been playing together. At some point, a white girl kissed one of the boys on the cheek in an innocent moment of childhood curiosity. But when her parents found out, all hell broke loose. Despite the kiss being consensual and harmless, the authorities acted with horrifying force. The boys were snatched from their homes, thrown into jail, and held without legal counsel. For days, they were separated from their families and subjected to intense interrogations. These were children, not criminals, yet they were being treated like dangerous adults. When Robert F. Williams learned what happened, he was furious and determined. He saw the incident for what it was. Not just an overreaction, but a clear example of systemic racism weaponized against black youth. And this time, he wasn't going to let it slide. Williams immediately began to organize rallies, contacting journalists and demanding justice. He didn't whisper behind closed doors. He shouted into the spotlight. He brought international attention to the case, writing letters to officials, churches, and civil rights organizations around the world. Soon, even former First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt and President Dwight D. Eisenhower were forced to take notice. Newspapers in Europe blasted the United States for its hypocrisy, preaching democracy abroad while locking up innocent black children at home. The global outcry worked. After 3 months behind bars, the charges were quietly dropped, and the boys were released. But the damage had been done already, not just to those children, but to America's image. Robert F. Williams became a symbol of a fearless activist who refused to be silent in the face of injustice. But not everyone applauded his approach. His outspoken tactics and belief in armed self-defense clashed with the national leadership of the NAACP, who feared that such bold moves could derail the larger civil rights agenda. Still, Williams stood firm. To him, protecting black children and confronting evil, no matter how controversial, was worth every risk. This moment was then known as the kissing case. It didn't just make headlines. It made history, and proved that Robert F. Williams was more than just an activist. He was a man unafraid to face power head-on. By 1961, Robert F. Williams had become one of the most feared and respected figures in the civil rights movement, not just by white supremacists but by the federal government itself. He had openly challenged the Ku Klux Klan with armed self-defense. He'd organized a black militia that successfully pushed back white mobs. And more importantly, he had shaken the idea that black Americans should endure injustice quietly. But the system that couldn't silence him with threats or bullets tried something else: criminalization. That year, during the height of the freedom rides, Monroe, North Carolina, once again erupted in racial tension. A group of civil rights activists, both black and white, traveled to Monroe to protest segregation and show solidarity. As expected, they encountered violence from white mobs and law enforcement. Williams, who was always at the center of the storm, helped shelter some of the white allies who had come under attack. Among them were a white couple, Bruce and Mabel Stagel. According to Williams, the couple willingly stayed in his home for protection, fearing the violence outside. There were no threats, no force, no criminal intent, just survival. But within days, the headlines screamed: Robert F. Williams wanted for kidnapping white couple.
Wow.
It was the perfect setup. A powerful black man, one who dared to stand up to the Klan, was now being accused of a crime that played directly into the racist fears of the time. The charge was false, but the impact was real. The authorities issued a warrant. Williams and his wife Mabel knew that what would come next wouldn't be a fair trial. It would be a political takedown. So they did the unbelievable. They vanished. First to Canada. Then, with the help of international allies, the couple made their way to Cuba, a country at odds with the U.S. and open to revolutionary voices. There, under the protection of Fidel Castro, Robert F. Williams built something the FBI never saw coming: Radio Free Dixie. Broadcasting from Havana, Radio Free Dixie was unlike anything black Americans had ever heard. It was a revolutionary lifeline that sent uncensored news, music, and radical black thought across the airwaves of the American South. Through static and government jamming attempts, Williams's voice pierced through, delivering messages of strength, dignity, and resistance. He spoke directly to the oppressed. You have a right to defend yourself. You are not helpless. You are not alone. For many, it was the first time they heard someone speak the truth so plainly, not as a plea for mercy, but as a call to power. But Williams didn't stop there. While in exile, he wrote the now iconic book, Negroes with Guns. Part autobiography, part manifesto, the book outlined his philosophy of armed self-defense and the need for black communities to organize for their survival. It flew in the face of mainstream civil rights doctrine, which was still rooted in nonviolence. But for many young black activists, including the founders of the Black Panther Party, it was a blueprint. They studied it, quoted it, modeled their ideas around it. Williams had become more than an activist. A global revolutionary, an enemy of the U.S. government, a friend, modeled their ideas around it. Williams had become more than an activist. He was now a global revolutionary, an enemy of the U.S. government, a friend to anti-colonial leaders, and a source of hope to black people around the world. And yet, despite his growing influence, the U.S. government continued to brand him a fugitive, chasing him with FBI agents, placing him on watch lists, and doing everything it could to suppress his voice. But his ideas had already taken root. And no matter how far he ran, his words were already home, spreading across cities, filling minds, and rewriting the rules of the movement. Robert F. Williams didn't just run from injustice, he carried the fight to a global stage and dared to tell Black America, you don't have to die for your rights. You have the right to live and fight for them. After escaping false charges in the U.S., Robert F. Williams didn't go into hiding. He went global. Williams wasn't just a guest in Cuba. He became part of the revolutionary network, forging connections with Fidel Castro and even developing a personal friendship with Che Guevara. These weren't just symbolic relationships. They were strategically rooted in shared opposition to colonialism, racism, and state violence. But his journey didn't stop there. In the mid-1960s, Williams traveled to China, where he was received like a foreign dignitary. He met Chairman Mao Zedong, who publicly expressed support for the struggle of African Americans in the U.S. Mao's message was clear. The fight for racial justice in America was part of a global struggle against oppression, and Robert F. Williams was at the center of it. While living abroad, Williams wrote essays and gave speeches that connected the experiences of Black Americans to anti-imperialist movements around the world. He argued that the oppression of Black people in the U.S. wasn't an isolated issue. It was deeply linked to systems of economic and political domination worldwide. His voice was sharp, radical, and impossible to ignore. Back in the States, younger leaders were listening. His groundbreaking book, Negroes with Guns, became a foundational text for the Black Panther Party, influencing figures like Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale. They took Williams's ideas of armed self-defense, community control, and revolutionary pride, and built a national movement. After nearly a decade in exile, from Cuba to China, Robert F. Williams finally returned to the United States in 1969. By then, the tide of the civil rights movement had shifted, and the kidnapping charges that once made him a fugitive were quietly dropped. But his return wasn't met with parades or press conferences. There were no grand welcomes. Instead, he slipped back into American life almost as quietly as he had vanished. He settled in Michigan, far from the tense southern battlegrounds where he once stared down the Klan. There, he lived a more private life, not silent, but intentional. Williams continued to write, to educate, and to mentor younger generations of activists. His mind was as sharp as ever, filled with reflections on justice, liberation, and the global fight for human dignity. Despite his incredible story, he remained largely forgotten by mainstream America. While textbooks celebrated figures of peaceful resistance, Williams, the man who dared to say Black lives were worth defending, was rarely mentioned. He never sought fame, only freedom. He passed away in 1996 at the age of 71, quietly, humbly, without the national recognition his courage deserved. But his influence never died. The very foundations of the Black Panther Party, the idea of armed self-defense, community patrols, and challenging systemic oppression were directly inspired by Robert F. Williams' teachings. His book, Negroes with Guns, became a blueprint for those who refused to be victims. Robert F. Williams wasn't just a man with a gun, he was a man with a mission, to teach Black people that they didn't have to die quietly. In a time when silence was expected, he chose defiance. He believed in standing tall, fighting for the right to exist without fear, and demanding dignity, not just for himself, but for every Black person who had been denied their humanity. But why is his name missing from our history books? Why is it that the stories of those who fought back and confronted injustice head-on are so often buried? Williams's legacy should be a beacon of inspiration, not a hidden chapter. And yet, too many remain unaware of his revolutionary impact. If you believe that Black history deserves to be told truthfully, that the stories of the fearless leaders who stood up for justice should be celebrated, share this video.
All right. That's the story of Robert F. Williams. Now we gonna get up out of here. Catch y'all the next one. Peace. This is HHN Special Stories. Robert F. Williams. Catch y'all on the next one.